My name's Eric Huffman. I'm from Georgia Tech. I work in the Institute Communications office there. I'm the team manager of our web team. We are the guys that and gal that maintain the top-level gottech.edu site, as well as a couple other top-level web properties for Georgia Tech. And today I'm going to talk about taking control of your theme with custom theme settings. And I don't know how many of you have ever messed with it, setting up your own custom theme settings. Anybody out there? Okay. So what I'm going to cover today is basically just kind of a general overview of examples of how you can leverage custom theme settings for mostly for like the site builder or the site maintainer type. And this is in an enterprise level environment. And what I mean by that is setting up sort of a one-size-fits-all theme that provides using the theme settings page to provide a straightforward way to manage layout and other site elements, the skin of the site, to help that site manager sort of stay in compliance with branding standards without having to jump through the hoops of moving blocks around or other sort of pain points of Drupal site management. So what do I mean by custom theme settings? Get this set up here. And you're all probably familiar with, you go to the theme settings page for your theme, the typical settings. Putting a logo up there, the site name, the slogan, etc. As well as turning off and on the main menu and secondary menu. And you probably noticed a lot of cases themes will just ignore these settings. So you may go in there and switch off the main menu, but your main menu still displays. But these are the defaults out of the box with Drupal. So I don't know if you've ever sub-theme off of a contributed theme out there, but Zen's a good example. It's kind of where I started learning more about custom theme settings, was sub-theming from Zen. And in Zen, if you go to their theme settings, you'll see that there's different layout options. They have some great accessibility tools included in there, as well as some theme development tools, and the option to turn off and on different JavaScript libraries that help with backwards compatibility with older browsers that don't support HTML5 elements or other responsive aspects of sites. And then we have the heavy hitters, or the heavyweights, where I don't know if you've ever tried to theme off of Omega or Adaptive, or look at the Bootstrap theme, and you'll see these theme settings provide a lot more than just the typical defaults. There's extensive layout options, especially with Adaptive and Omega, where there's all kinds of settings you can turn on for meta tags that will, like the device meta tags for doing responsive websites. And more or less when you look at these, it's almost like filling out a tax form sometimes, because there's so many different options. But they're, it's great these are, all designed to be base themes that you sub-theme out of. So all of these elements are inherited into your sub-theme, which is, if you add on, you could do your additional settings on top of that to even extend what they've already created for you. It's just, a great way to save a lot of time on your end for all the custom markup that you would have to add. This theme provide, these base themes provide out of the box. So how does it work? Well, in general, like I said, in the theme info file, you have the default settings, and they're just, that's the syntax right there, the settings, the actual setting name, and then the value. Then in your template file, you could, calling a preprocessor function for, setting up variables for your page. You basically just get the value of that, and then of that setting that's in the info file, create a variable that is then available in your page template. And then in example here, I've got some markup where I'm just basically using that value within a style class for an element to alter it. So you could just stop right here, just straight out of the box. You could, in your theme that you create, you could just enter a bunch of lines of different settings, and you're good to go. But then obviously, you can't give people options. You couldn't give anybody options if they're going to go in there and what kind of site manager is going to go into the info file and enter their own lines for the different settings that they want. If you were you could use this setting value to not just modify a CSS class, but the actual text within that div element, the hello world, could be outputting the value of that setting. So, obviously you don't want your site manager, your content strategist, or whatever that's maintaining the site to have to do that kind of thing. So, enter the theme settings file. And you've probably seen this if you've ever, subthemes off of Zen or other themes, you'll see that theme settings file that's in there. And within there, you call the form system theme settings alter hook, which allows you to create form elements for the theme settings page of your site. So if you went to my theme, the settings page for my theme, where you get the interface with the form that you can fill out and select the different options, this is where you're going to add, in that theme settings file, where you add this is just using the Drupal form API to set up form elements that are available on that theme settings page. And then again, in your template file, you set up your preprocessor functions where you're calling the value, but this time it's looking for the form elements are created from that theme settings file. So it's more or less pulling it from that theme settings page that the user can control. And then again, you're just generating variables that you then make accessible in the page template file. Let's see. Bear with me a second here. So here's a closer look example of using the form API to set up form elements in that theme settings file. This is just a general syntax that you would use to create a drop-down menu. So I'm going to show you an example here. And also, sorry, I forgot to mention at the beginning, I set up a quick sub-theme on GitHub. There's the address there. As part of this demo, if you want to go grab a copy of it, and I'll show it off in a second here. It's just a real basic theme, but I tried to be as expansive as possible with the documentation of the theme settings file and some good examples if you've never dived into the Drupal's form API, and I'm certainly no expert in it, but I try to make it as simple as possible so you can just cut and paste and use those options if you want to set up your own custom theme settings. So in any case, here we are that, basically this code translates into that drop-down menu in your theme settings page. And again, mostly what I'm going to cover, I'm not going to go into the level of form elements that you might see with the adaptive theme or Omega on their theme settings page. We're just going to cover some basic drop-downs and radio buttons and other options that you could include in your theme settings. So now we're going to jump to a demo of, this is the Magically Delicious Corporation. This is the demo theme that I created to show you some options that you could create for your site on, setting up, controlling layout and the skin of a site. So imagine the Magically Delicious Corporation has various divisions, and then across the United States, those divisions are in different territories. So they all want to have the same branded look of the site. And in style guidelines, you may have sort of limits of what color palettes you can use depending on the division or whatever. As well as layout treatment of the site. But the main goal there being that we all want to make sure that when you go to this site, we're all part of the Magically Delicious Corporation. So let's dive into some of the theme setting options that are in here. So currently, the flavor we have chosen for our site is Blue Diamonds, but we could swap that to Purple Horseshoes. We are actually not part of the Leprechaun Arbitration Division, but we are in sugar procurement, and we are in the southeastern United States. For the kind of content on our site, we've got a lot of stuff that's really a left side menu would be more appropriate for the content that we have instead of the top horizontal menu. And this is a good, sort of option to show or opportunity to show you where, imagine somebody that's a sort of a new site builder and they're in that situation. They've got the top horizontal menu. It's not really working for them. They want something on the left. Well, they're going to have to go to the blocks page or the block setting page or something, move stuff around. And for somebody that's new to Drupal, that's probably going to cause headaches and not be very fun for them. So you can give them, use theme settings to do this kind of thing where they just select an option. You want on the left, you want on the top. And then, our company has mascots, so, let's put one on our site. So we'll include a mascot, and we're going to go with Smiley McSmiles here. We'll save the configuration, go back to the home page, and there we go. We got a mascot, we got our menu on the left, and we changed to the purple horseshoe skin. So let's go back, and I'll show you some other things you can do with theme settings. So we will swap out, go with a different division again, same thing, just setting the options. But then we decide, we do want the menu on the top, and we're going to get Mr. Surly O'Krabby in here. So save the configuration, and then you notice you get an error message in here. So this is something you can do with your theme settings, is you can evaluate what people have selected and give them warnings. So in this case, I'm saying Surly Leprechauns don't like menus hanging above their heads. You might consider keeping the menu to the left, or things might get ugly. So let's see what happens. We're not going to listen to that. We're going to go back. Oh, look at that guy. He's not very happy. He's a pissed off leprechaun right there. So we don't want that on our site. Let's get him out of there. He's not happy. So we'll go back with the left side menu, save, and there we go. So now he's slightly happier, but he's still kind of mean. So let's instead go with Tipsy McSauce. There we go. That's the leprechaun we want for our domain. That's much more appropriate. So anyway, this theme is on GitHub. If you want to go download it, break it, mess around with it, do what you want, or feel free to contact me if you have any suggestions or anything to share with ways that you've been able to use theme settings to give a little bit more control for your site. Let's see. So, how can I use this again? Other possibilities. Live demo number 2. So at Georgia Tech, we've got a theme that the Institute Communications Office distributes to the campus, and I'll show you some of the options that we've set up in there. We'll go through a little bit more advanced options and just other ways basically to configure your site. Again, our goal is try to keep things sort of brand compliant as possible, because I don't know if in the corporate world there's a lot more, you can be stricter with that. In the nonprofit and especially in higher ed, people like to do their own thing a lot, so it's very tough to try to control. If we want everybody to use the same logo treatment, it's kind of the Wild West. So trying to create tools, and kind of like they were covering in the keynote, make it as folks at Yale. Our goal here, same thing. We're trying to make it as simple as possible, and it's easy to maintain so that people don't go off and do their own thing as much. So we can look at this is just basically kind of a prototype site that was set up for the gift planning department at Georgia Tech. And these are the guys that, part of the fundraising team, try to get the $1 million donors and stuff. So here we have, what we set up here was using the logo options. So you can just, by default, you can say, give me a logo listed below, and then we went ahead and just added all the colleges at Georgia Tech, so you could change to an actual college, or you could opt to, choose a file instead and upload a logo, and I'm walking here. Live demos always go well. There we go. So, in the theme settings, you have this kind of option to provide text. So we're providing, sort of information. If you're going to use one of the logos that is built into the theme, here's how you contact our office if you need assistance. Here's the requirements. And one thing this form field setting is actually a managed file versus like with the default Drupal settings where you have you can upload a logo or upload a fave icon. Those just take the file and dump it into like the site's default files directory. When you're using a managed file, you can actually do things like make sure that it's a certain file type, make sure that it's a certain dimensions. And what that does is it basically ties the file to the file gets an entry in the file database tables, and it's like associated more or less with you have to associate with a user or an entity. So in this case, we just associate with the user that uploads it, and that way it will stay in the database file system. Because otherwise, if it's not, you can still go through and set it up this way, but if it's not associated with a user, then it's like the next cron run that happens, the file gets wiped out because it's considered a temporary file. So I'll show you later when I talk about some pitfalls. There's an actual thread on Drupal.org where you can read up more on that. Also on the site, there's to the right side of the brand, the logo element, we have set up options so that you can add a site title. So if you're maybe part of a college at Georgia Tech, but then it's a research lab, you can identify that on the right side of the branding bar. And one thing to note about this too is, and this is another thing I'll cover in some of the pitfalls and best practices, is there's already a site title option on the site under the default site information page. And we just experienced this recently where somebody was trying to change, for the love of God, I want to change that yellow title on the right side thing, and it won't change for me. Why is that? Well, they didn't realize it was in the theme settings and not in the site information page. So if you are setting up theme settings for your site, just take into consideration that if there's an option already out there, don't try to override it here because it's just going to cause confusion to the user. And then a lot of this stuff is just like with the test theme, it's just setting up different options that are just used in the interface to control how a search drop-down box works. We want to make sure that every site, please put your address and phone number on your site, who to contact you. So you set that up so that you've got that in the theme settings. It's easier for people to just enter it there instead of having to go build a block, put that block in the right region of the page, and then if you've got the full WYSIWYG control on the block, then they're going to, who knows what they'll do with the text. So this way you can just tightly control it so it's just a nice, simple display at the bottom of the page. And then, did I change anything here? Okay, so I swapped the logo. Logo is now the Office of Development logo. And that's pretty much it as far as how we're currently using theme settings in the Georgia Tech site. We have future plans for other elements to provide more options within theme settings to do other layout control things with your site. Let's see. Okay. So as far as the pitfalls and best practices go, as I mentioned, don't duplicate fields that already exist in other options within your Drupal site. Don't cause confusion by overriding fields. A good example of this is, say, if you set up in your theme settings an option to hide all blocked titles. So then, if that's turned on, somebody creates a block, they enter something in the title field, and then why isn't my title showing up? And it's because you're overriding it through the theme settings. Also note that to access that theme settings page, that the user must have the administer themes permission. So if you have a site builder, maintainer person that they're going to go into that theme settings page, and then that means they're going to have access. If you have other themes on there, they could just go in and flip your site to use a different theme and screw things up. So just be aware that it will require them to have that administer themes permission. And with the Drupal default settings, one thing I discovered is that if you in your info file, if you don't list any of the Drupal defaults, they'll all just show up automatically on the theme settings page. If you just include one of those defaults, then that's the only one that will show up and the others won't. And what I was trying to do is I don't want any of them to show up because I want just my theme settings to make it just easier to the user. You don't need to worry about these Drupal ones. They're already taken care of. Just focus on the ones that are applicable to this theme. So what I discovered is that if you leave out the file upload, the logo file upload, or the fave icon upload, then it will throw an error. And things will still work, but it just throws that error. And so what I considered was the best way to handle that was just to hide those things with CSS. You just keep them all turned on, but they're hidden so nobody can access them, and that helps avoid confusion. And then this is the actual thread on Drupal.org where I talk about the upload options and using the manage file instead of just the standard one that like the logo upload and the fave icon uses. So to recap, creating your own custom theme settings, handy way to offer that tight control for visual identity elements or skinning of the site, as well as doing some layout manipulation. And you can also, as we've seen with the more advanced base themes such as Adaptive and Omega, you can use those to set up development tools as well as turning off and on different JavaScript libraries that would get included in your theme. To get started with experimental settings, as I said, you can just try creating your own settings in your .info file and just using those to modify CSS classes in your page template. But then feel free to use the theme that I set up to kind of copy and paste some of your own custom form settings for the theme settings page. And just keep it simple, avoid duplicating existing options that are available through Drupal, through core basically, and use caution with story leprechaun. So that's all I have to talk about. Anybody have any questions?
So the example that you showed, that started as one of the base themes, like Adaptive, and then you created your customized theme settings off of that as a sub-theme? Is it?
For the example theme that I have, the Magically Delicious Corporation, that's just a standalone theme. And I can actually show you. I've got some of the code pulled up here if you're interested. Right. So here's kind of the whole file system. I don't know if you can see that well enough, but the theme settings page, right? So here's some examples, where I try to document things, and like right here is where I'm saying, okay, let's go ahead and hide those Drupal defaults, and all it is it's using the form API syntax to just basically take those field sets that those logo upload, site name, take that field set, and I'm just applying that element hidden to that field set. So it's there, it's just hidden. So anyway, yes, this is all in just this theme. We're not sub-theming off anything else. It's just keeping it nice and simple.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm thinking about using Omega.
Okay.
Is that recommended for, especially for a later transition to 8?
I'm not really sure. I haven't really, most of my day-to-day work at Georgia Tech, we don't sub-theme initially. In past versions, we sub-theme off of Zen. But really, we're just creating our own base theme to work off of. But Omega is highly supported. There's a lot of community support behind it, and if you can, I feel like there's a little bit of a learning curve with some of those settings, understanding everything. But once you kind of get control of that, it is extremely powerful and helpful. So I would say that it's transitioning to 8. It's probably one of those themes that will be right along with core moving over to 8 to an official release.
When you're building your themes, you using responsive design in building those themes?
Yeah. I mean, this base theme this basic one does have some responsive element aspects to it. I mean, it's just some basic media queries for moving stuff around on the page. I mean, I didn't do too much, get too advanced with it, but grab it. Weird. So things will kind of squash down a little, but just some basic stuff. Nothing very simple. Does that answer your question? Okay. Not for this. Yeah, it's well, some of the like the typography I took from Foundation, but again, the goal with this theme is just to sort of demonstrate theme setting. And like with the Georgia Tech theme, that's the Zerb Foundation framework with some of the stuff we use for that base theme.
I have 2 questions. The first one is super simple. Can you go back to the slide that had the path for the managed files? Because apparently I typed it wrong. You can't find that page. Okay, go forward. That one. Oh, okay, see what I did? So my second question, the real one, is about whether you've done any custom theme settings where you're inputting, you're giving some options for some of those responsive. For example, when you're responsive, and I've got a sidebar that's a menu bar, sidebar box. Using a theme setting where your site administrator could decide, do I want that sidebar block to pop above the content or below the content?
Right.
Have you used any theme settings for that kind of thing?
Not in particular, but I mean, it would be the same concept where you're basically just, so you're creating like a drop-down menu in the theme settings, and then those values you would just turn into a variable on the page, but you would manipulate the CSS.
So I could give, or I could even manipulate where it appears in my page template.
Right.
So
exactly.
say I've got an option that is, sidebars appear above content on mobile, or sidebars appear below content.
Exactly.
And then based upon the variable there, then in my template, I can make it appear here or make it appear there.
Right.
Or using Bootstrap, do push or pull.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Cool.
Back here.
I noticed you were using sized placeholders. Is that something that you put on the content type, or is that just something that you put in the template?
Size?
Where you gave the size of the image. I thought that was really helpful
Oh, right,
for
right.
the user.
When you were uploading, like
On your gift planning template?
Yeah. So what was the question then?
Well, is that a placeholder that's in your theme, or is it on the content type as a default image?
That's within the theme. So they need to upload that at exact dimensions for it to work.
Yeah, we have a problem with that.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, the redesign looks awesome.
Oh, thanks.
I went to UGA, so that's saying a lot that
I didn't actually.
I worked for Georgia State University for 4 years, and we would always kind of heckle the tech side, Anyway, but just having worked for a university, there's so many politics. Everyone is kind of in their own world. Do you have kind of a decision criterion for when you put something in a form setting versus just kind of letting them play with it with blocks and other things?
Right. Really, for us, out of the communications office, we're the creative strategy and brand management group. We've been relabeled not too long ago. So really, that's our main concern, is just trying to control those branding elements as much as possible. But everything else, basically our style guide right now for the sites on campus is, as long as you have that top bar that fulfills all the branding requirements, and then down at the bottom, like the legal requirements of having accessibility information and legal and privacy information, and kind of everything in between is right now it's just go nuts. We might have a little tighter control on that in the future, but right now, going back to what they said, Miguel, the lady from Yale said, is really it's until you have the coolest tools possible. Nobody's going to really want to do what you're telling them to do unless you create the coolest thing.
Now, is tech as a whole moving to Drupal? Is that kind of a top-down deal?
Yeah, we're definitely all in on Drupal. It was 2007, 2008, I guess, when we started to use. Our top-level site was still static, but we would have certain sections of it that were Drupalized. So you go to gottech.edu/president, and it was actually a reverse proxy thing where it was bringing in the Drupal site that was for the office of the president. But now this just like just over a year ago, is when we finally launched the top level site into a full-blown Drupal site.
What do you take into consideration with our custom theming versus sub-theming offering? What factors?
Yeah, I think like when I was showing the example of just manually changing settings in your info file, you would still have to kind of have a sub-theme off of that. If you wanted to change the skin, you really only have one option you can put in the settings file or the .info file. So you'd have to have that sub-theme to change the skin. If I'm in the sugar procurement division and we want the blue skin, then I have to turn on that sub-theme. So you still are going to find, at Georgia Tech, we still have sub-themes off of the main theme. But right. But we're still, trying to control as much options as possible within that. Well, not as. It's kind of a fine line. You get to a point where you're like, well, I just need to do something to tackle that versus trying to control everything in that settings file. So, like I said, it's just best to keep it simple. What are your priorities? For us, it's kind of the branding aspects. You don't want to have to maintain a bunch of sub-themes too.
I guess the question stems from, I feel like with designers we get files that aren't necessarily one-to-one with some like themes, and then the answer was like, we're going to pick up a theme and we're going to customize that theme, and it's like never right, you know? So I don't know how to have that conversation. Be like, why can't you start from scratch?
Yeah. Instead of like using Bootstrap or something like that?
Yeah, instead of using something that comes prepackaged, building on top of, but really haven't got it.
Right. Well, that's kind of how we were with the Zerb Foundation. I mean, it's great, but those things are really were originally set up to do like rapid prototyping. So when we actually had to work with an outside agency that was hired to do a lot of the design work on the redesign and stuff. And I mean, basically what they did is they just skinned Zerb Foundation. It kind of looked very similar to other sites that are using that framework. And so, I mean, we still took some elements out of that. And, looking back now, we are having to add in other JavaScript stuff that if we had used a framework from, its full build out from the beginning, we wouldn't have to go down and do it and add in custom stuff now. But, you just kind of, it's a lot of weight to bring in with using a framework. Any other questions? Okay, well, that went fast.
Since there are no other questions, can I extend on the question that he had about do you build off of a framework or do you roll from scratch? If I could build off of his question about do you use a framework or do you roll from scratch?
Right.
And I agree generally with the concept of if you're building off of a framework, like you're using Foundation or Zen or Omega or Adaptive or any of those, you may be bringing in a lot of functionality and a lot of weight that you don't really need.
Right.
So what I've done is I took the Bootstrap Contrib theme and converted it to Sass. And when I start building my themes, I basically start with all of the Bootstrap JS turned off, many of the some of the Bootstrap Sass files not compiled, and then as I need them, I realize I need that functionality, I add it back in.
Oh, right.
So I need collapse, so I'm going to add collapse back in. I need, whatever, then I add it back in. And if I find that the Bootstrap, Sass component for navigation is giving me a bunch of stuff that I don't need, I replicate that, put it in a custom folder, compile that instead of Bootstrap's version, without having to override a lot of things. I just hijack it, don't compile it. But that's because I'm not using a CDN version of the Bootstrap CSS. I'm using the Bootstrap Sass and replacing elements as I need them, so I'm not having to undo something and then write over it in my custom Sass.
Or you can just use Motion. Strip everything out.
That's true.
In response to you, our team is a team of 6, and we manage 100 Drupal websites for University of UGA. And so I wanted to have something that, even though it has a lot of overhead, that it would be consistent with the branding for everything. So whether there in the next 3 years or not, it's always going to be available as a very consistent product that future designers will be able to work with.
So that means that you're using a stable framework and you're not.
My concerns are I want to see something that has been really well developed and maintained. And Mega seems like the way to go. And it's really making a lot of effort for AAA integration. We're probably not going to go AAA for another 7 years. Well, it's 100 websites to convert. Yeah. And then, when does the cutoff point from Drupal 7 module development turn into Drupal 8 module development? When do they stop supporting 7 to the point where we have to go to 8?
Well, we still have sites that are in 6 that are, there's just so much content, there's so much there that, we're having discussions now. It's like, well, let's just backport a version of our Drupal 7 theme, and let them look like the new look and live that way forever, because it's just too much to handle. Yeah. For the time being, until somebody we have the staff to convert all that over.
That's a huge undertaking.
Any other questions? Curious, what is it about Omega that's... I've always found that I'm more fighting with Omega more than I'm like, and it's really helping me. I run from Omega 5 a day.
Right, okay.
I know that there's a lot of rave about it. I know that you can control a lot of your region settings, etc. from the GUI. But in the end, I just find that it puts a lot of stuff that gets in my way.
It does, yeah.
And it really helps me. I'm finding that I spend more time taking it apart or trying.
So would you prefer like a Zen or something else? Or
personally, and everybody knows this, I use Mothership. Sometimes I've done what Ann does with Bootstrap, SAS.
Yeah.
But I like to do my own custom things because it's just clean.
Yeah.
The more control that I can have over my markup, the better. So I do still use semantic views, believe it or not, because it strips out, a lot of markup. I use fences because it strips out a lot of markup around your fields. I do think, I use Mothership because it's just clean. Now there are settings by default that Drupal provides that you really need with certain modules. So like Mothership, you have to be careful what you enable in Mothership, or it will get in the way of some of the modules that depend on those classes. Right? Because Drupal adds classes, modules leverage those classes, and if you really need to use that module, well then, sometimes you need to use the extra stuff. Right?
I got kind of attracted to accessibility and responsiveness because that's part of, we can be sued if we're not accessible.
Right.
We're educational. So I haven't heard of Mothership. I'm definitely going to look into that.
It strips things out. It keeps things nice and clean. I can't say enough about it.
Another approach too that I took with the Georgia Tech theme is, we were talking about like a grid system and stuff, and Drupal kind of already has one with blocks. So we just kind of manipulated the way blocks are created so that you're just adding extra classes so that if you have 4 blocks in a region, they just automatically go to 25%, and then at certain breakpoints they stack on top of each other, and it definitely made it a lot cleaner just to have basically one Nixon or partial that just handles all that, your SAS or whatever, instead of trying to manipulate or work with some of the other frameworks out there. Any other questions? Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you for coming.